own flavor of drama, intensity, performance, and memories. So it was unique to being, French.
Yeah. Kim, I'm going to start off by talking about the 100 meters, and we're going to talk about the 100 meters women. And I suppose before we start, it's to note that this race is probably clouded in controversy, given Shelly-Ann Fraser, in terms of her, dare I say, her omittance from the race and really peculiar sorts of circumstances in terms of the omittance. Did that sort of take away from the event in terms of the 100 meters ladies to have a former three-time Olympian, what would have been her last Olympics, not being able to compete in the race?
Of course, you definitely want to be there, regardless of how many times you've been to the Olympics. You qualified and you're there. You definitely want to go out and see what can happen on that day. So it would have been great having her in the race as well as her other countrymen. So yes, it would have been better having them there and see what unfolds.
Yeah, and the race itself, people were talking about the Sha'Carri Richardson, Shericka Jackson, and we know Shericka Jackson pulled up with injury. So it was just really Shericka Richardson from the USA, and she was involved with that Shelly-Ann Fraser Price instance, but she raced herself and she came through to the final. But the final was a sort of a whitewash. It was just completely dominated from Julian Alfred from start to finish.
Well, if you follow Julian, you would know what she's capable of. And to some, they would be surprised, but she's world indoor champion. She's already been branding herself as a champion. And a lot of athletes, they don't go through having gone through lower level championships in order to groom themselves. So Julian, she did her part. She been racing, and if you knew anything, you see the possibilities. Yes, we wanted to see Shericka in there as well, but again, she and Shelly-Ann were not there. But it was definitely a race to see.
Yeah, and I suppose, Kim, in terms of that race, Mona Jefferson, I have to mention, got the bronze level. But in terms of that race, was it Julian Alfred's ability to double up as a 100 and 200 meter? She seemed to have that kick for the final 50 meters that normally we would associate it with a 200 meter, that she was hitting her next form or next gear when maybe Shericka Richardson was maybe beginning to tie up.
No, well, for both of them, they've been doing a lot. And I think after Julian won, I know from previous experience, not winning the Olympics, but World Championships, that there's going to be so much demand on her from that moment. Coming back for the 200 would have been difficult because she, as a new champion, there's a lot of obligations, press conference, interviews, photo shoots. There's so much that would have been going on before that 200. It would have been difficult for her. But Sha'Carri, yeah, she's running well. She's doing her thing, and of course, it's the Olympics. It's the one everybody been training for 4 years. So it's gonna be very difficult for it to be an easy win. So it's always an interesting one.
Yeah. And Kim, if we can move on to, we'll stick with the women and we'll move on to the 200 meters. And Gabby Thomas made the decision specifically to solely focus on the 200 meters. She didn't ring the 100 meters. She didn't participate in the relay until the 200 meters final was over. So she was zoned in on this race, and it really sort of shone through, really, that you mentioned Julian, after winning the 100, she was on cloud nine, but she still, people thought she might put it up to Gabby in the final, but Gabby really stamped her class and really showed that she has arrived on the international stage after previous Olympics attempts.
Right. But then, as you mentioned, she saved her legs for that. And there's some persons who will come in and put their energy and focus onto what they've been working for all these years and say, hey, this is the Olympics. I'm going to give this my best shot. And some people do that. And of course, it paid off for her. And she's an amazing athlete and she's an amazing person. So eventually, once you're there, your number will call and you will shine in the way that you've been intended and training for.
Yeah, I'm going to switch across now to the men's 100 and 200 before we go back again. And the men's 100 meters final, what can we say? A race for the ages in terms of the distance between all the top 5 and 6. We're talking about personal records from 1 down as far as 5. And the big surprise really was the Jamaican who won the semi-final, finishing Simbale from Jamaica, finishing last maybe in the 100 meters in terms of the final. But in terms of the final, between Keyshawn Thompson, Noah Lyles, Fred Kearney, Simbami, Tobago, there was absolutely nothing between from 1 to 5. But maybe the Jamaican that won the semi-final, the other Jamaican finishing last, maybe that was a big surprise.
It was. I had Civil as a dark horse, as well as Kenny Kung Fu, Kung Fu Kenny, they call him. Those were my two dark horses, because we know Kishane can run. He's proven the world that he definitely can run. And we know of Noah Lyles. But you cannot look at it as a 1 or 2 man race. There's always upsets. And a lot of us been looking for that race to come. That was the world's fastest race, mainly because all 8 men were below 10 seconds. I personally was looking forward to being in one of those races where every man went under 10 seconds. But hey, I was alive to see it, and it was a great accomplishment. And it just showed the depth of what sprinting has evolved to, because, 8 men under 10 seconds was amazing. And of course, the finish was very tight, and they had to be separated by, I don't know how. I mean, I know back in the past, usually the guy who led the race most of the time would be the winner. But I guess the rules have changed now, and that was a tough finish. We all thought Kishane won, but the officials say Noah Lyles won. So they're the ones who have the say.
Yeah. And Kim, in terms of maybe the 100 meters, the performance of the African sprinter, Simbane from South Africa, Tobago, obviously, as well. They're really it's not really, the 100 meters used to be associated in the past with Jamaicans, with Caribbeans, with USA sprinters. But now we're seeing some African countries like Botswana and countries like South Africa really coming to the forefront in terms of sprints, in terms of 100 meters and 200 meters.
Well, from my memory, as far back as my first Olympics in 1996, countries like Ghana and Nigeria were always strong and showing that they're forced to reckon with. And I think now they're really putting it together. I mean, there's another young man from Kenya who's been running well, so I was looking for him as well. But it's hot. These races are getting hotter and hotter each year. So it's like, who is fit enough to complete the task? Because speed is not everything. You got to be fit to carry that speed day after day, round after round.
And the 200 meters, well, the start of it and the race and the backstory was all surrounded with controversy about Noah Lyles and COVID and the hysterics before the race and the antics and everything after the race. But we cannot forget the race itself. And wow, Tobago from start to finish. Let's take nothing away from his accomplishment. He deservedly won that race, and I don't think anyone would have beaten him on that day.
Right. And again, he's been doing his thing. And once you're there and you're consistent, your number will call. But you have to understand, Noah Lyles, he's a face right now. He has to have the antics. But the other competitors, they cannot let him have all the energy. Once they understand what the energy does out on the track, they will go back and harness their own energy and make sure that you don't diminish their ego. Because once the ego is lost or gone, it's easy to dominate and beat your competitors into submission. So when you get out there, a lot of times most people lost before you get to the track. So when Noah Lyles comes on the track and he's trying to dominate and feed off the energy and suck all the energy into him, it makes it easier to dominate his competitors. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but you have to be strong, both mentally and physically, to stand up and not let the antics get to you. But I see a lot to come in the future, but you have to understand that these guys, when they get out there, you have to be focused and not let the antics destroy you. But, also in relation to COVID, if we had heard that story before the race, it would have been fine, but you cannot have an excuse after a loss. It's unacceptable, because if you had won, we wouldn't hear that you had COVID either. So You got to take you winning like a man, and you got to lose like a man. The same man that win is the same man that lose.
Yeah, and Kim, you're a veteran for in terms of Olympians and a veteran in terms of running at World Championships. And I just want to mention one man there who sort of came to this Olympics. Maybe he's the last hurrah, and obviously hoping to go to prove himself once again, but it didn't happen. Andre de Grasse, probably resting Canada's hopes. Is there a time when every athlete, when maybe the one cycle, maybe that cycle has just passed you by, and maybe for Andre de Grasse at this Olympics, that cycle had just passed him by?
Well, I haven't seen him much when the Olympics is not on, so he doesn't race that much. So I'm not sure what shape or condition he's in. But you have to understand, did I put in the work? Did I do what I'm supposed to? For most of us, for me especially personally, my body was shutting down before I retire. Once you love it and you do it and do it at that level, your body will have to say no before you quit. I don't know about other athletes, but nobody on this planet was going to make me quit my sport. No matter if you come first, second, or eighth, you love it and this is what you do. Your body is what says done, not the fans, not your manager, not your coach. Your body will let you know when your time has come.
Yeah. And fascinating insight, Kim. Kim, we're going to move on to the 400 meters now, and we're going to start with the women. And there was deep interest here in Ireland. We had our own athlete, Rashida Adeleke, running in this, and hopes were high that she would come and she would take a medal. And she looked for the world coming down the home stretch that she was going to take third place. But Kaczmarek, the pole, took her in the last, I'd say, 10 yards. And I suppose that was the second time that she sort of missed out. She missed out on the gold in the Europeans. Kaczmarek took her and the Europeans. And then the same thing happened in the Olympics. She finished fourth. And finishing fourth in the Olympics, is it really a lonely place when you have aspirations for medals?
It's the worst. You would rather come fifth to eighth than fourth. When you come fourth, it's like, oh my, just one more person. And, it was a tough race. And I haven't seen Nasser run for a while. I knew he's capable of doing great things. And it was going to be a tough race. That was one of the tough races that were out there, that women's 400. And it's interesting to watch. But that last, I would say 50, a lot of the athletes in most of the events, it was all about the posture. The postures were off, and it caused them to run a lot slower. And I know it's hard to say when you're watching, but when you're out there on the track and you see the finish line and you wish you could just throw a rope and pull it to you, it doesn't work that way. But it's where you keep your composure, and it's where the form and the background training comes in, that you just keep your composure, and the finish line, you'll get there. But a lot of people, they fight, they begin to fight, and they don't realize that they run a lot slower. So if they can keep their composure in that last 50, where most people begin to deteriorate, you will see a better finish.
And Kim, just on that, in terms of the winners that won it, Paulino won the race by a good bit, but she's nearly in her 30s now. Nasir is nearly in her late 20s. Kaczmarek, who came third, is nearly up in 27. Rashida is only 21. She's giving maybe 6 or 7 years younger than all three that finished ahead of her. Is that a good stand to head into the next Olympics, or you just have to take the race as America's? Who knows, in 4 years' time there could be girls younger than her from USA and Jamaica. But coming forward at 21, does it mean that you can evolve and get better if your competition is much older than you?
Oh yes, there's always room for improvement. I mean, you remember, you're speaking to the guy who peaked at age 40. So it's possible, but it's an individual sport. So each person have to look and see, okay, this is where I am today, and this is what happened. Going forward, how do I get better? What do I need to change? What in my diet is missing? My training, how was it? How many times did I compete this year? Those are the plans an athlete has to really look at positively in order to make it better. You can't look at it negatively, because it brings your emotions down and you begin to regret. So you look at the positive. Did I train well this year? Did I compete well? And how did that work for me? And you try to transition that into the next season. Do I need to race more? Do I need to race less? Do I need to train more, or do I need to train less? That is where that communication is with the athlete and the coach in order to find out what we need to do to move forward personally.
Speaking now about my moment at the Olympics, and I don't know, other people would point out different things, but my moment for the Olympics was the never say die attitude from Quincy Hall in the 400 meters to say, no, I'm not going to finish second. I'm not going to be content. And finding some extra reserve, breaking all strides. You mentioned posture, technique. Everything went out the window with Quincy. It was just absolute grit and thinking that, no, I'm going to find somewhere deep inside me to push me past the guy who was unbeaten all year, Michael Hudson-Smith, who thought he had the race run. He was practically celebrating maybe a yard or two from the line, and Quincy Hall from nowhere. I thought it was amazing. It was my moment at the Olympics anyway, because it looked like he was finishing second, but he got a burst from the heavens, really.
Man, and I got to backtrack a second, and no one has said it, and it's something that I take to heart. Never underestimate your opponent. Never. When I step on that line, I know that even if it's a 5-year-old I'm racing, never underestimate your opponent. I've seen a lot of people come in and do that. Even, this is off topic, but the race walker, just about to cross the line and start celebrating, and then the other girl on the outside passed her. You do that. Everybody is coming for gold. And if they're not gold, is going to settle for silver or bronze, but they're not going to let you win. So yes, we're going to dig in, we're going to dig deep, and we're going to fight. And if we got to be pulled off on a stretcher, it's going to be because we want a medal. That's how it is for us. We're going to do everything. We're going to pull deep, dig deep to get that medal.
And I suppose, Kim, last two races to go through with you now. The 400-meter hurdles start with the women. And when we talk about legacy and legends, when we look back in 50 years, one name in terms of hurdles and female hurdles will go down in history. And Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, she is an ambassador of sport. She is probably one of the greatest hurdlers ever to live. And this Olympics almost solidified her legacy. If she never did an Olympics again, she will go down probably as one of the great hurdlers of all time.
Right. And we thought that she would have been up there more, but again, she seems like she was a bit tired. But regardless, again, this is the Olympics, so everybody came prepared, and it was really, really exciting to watch, and I enjoyed watching it. And you got to congratulate the winners, because the winning style, when they're gonna pull out a performance that is greater than persons before them, you cannot knock that. And hats off to a lot of those athletes that did performance that were personal best, national record. I mean, you got to give it to them as well. Even though they didn't win, they went out and outdid the fellow countrymen or outdid themselves. So you got to give it to everyone who, just brought their best performance at that Olympics. And I was proud of them because they did well, regardless of what.
Yeah, and Kim, the 400-meter hurdles now, and Karsten Warholm, he won the Europeans in so much style. He destroyed the field, basically. And people are saying this is his Olympics, maybe to solidify with Sydney McLaughlin flown, but people are saying Ray Benjamin's the form guy all year. Ray Benjamin's the guy who's been clocking up the times, and maybe people are saying it's the legend Warholm against the new kid on the block, Ray Benjamin, but form sort of beat out legacy in this term. The form guy beat the legend.
Well, the three finishes it was tough, because all three are, above and beyond what we normally see. So any one of the three we know could have won for sure. And wow, I mean, he stepped up, and that's what it is. It's the Olympics, and you got to step up on that day, on that moment. And then we come back in 4 years. But the things you do before, you want it to count, but it really doesn't. When it comes to that day, everything, as you say, sometimes form technique is out the window. Is just about rising to the occasion on that day.
And Kim, how will the Jamaicans view this Olympics in terms of this track and field? Will they be very disappointed? Obviously, this is probably one of the least medals for the Jamaicans in my memory in terms of track and field for a long time. They won it in other sports, but in terms of sprints for the Jamaicans, there wasn't a gold medal really, which is normally a surprise when you think about Jamaica across all the disciplines.
Yeah, it was a shock for a lot of us. And, I saw Kishain carrying the weight of the team and even the young girl in the women's 100 tier. I mean, she's still a child. And, for her to come and make the final, I don't think she understood the magnitude of what she did. And she have maybe at least 6 more Olympics in her, once she takes care. And I'm thinking, of course, 2028, she will be a force to reckon with for sure once she stay on the path that she's on. And Kishain will definitely come back. I mean, remember, next year is the World Championships, so we get to do all this over again in track and field. So everyone going to be looking, heading to Japan next year. So it's a rivalry that will never stop. But I think the athletes, they know when we're competing against each other. But to the fans and everybody else in the Olympics, it's a competition of countries. So while the athletes competing against themselves because they see each other year after year, Diamond Leagues, wherever, the fans watching know it's a competition of countries, my country against your country. And that's what it represents. And that is why the athletes get so much pressure at these games, because you're representing the flag of your country, of your nation. That's what makes it so difficult.
And Kim, last question, final question. In terms of the relays, we noticed in terms of the relays that the Americans and Jamaicans, in terms of the baton changes, not really working with each other, that it didn't seem to work. But an awful lot of European countries did very well in terms of relays. Again, Ireland in the women's relay just missed out, finishing fourth again, getting pipped on the line when it looked like a medal. But one thing that showed me is, do the Caribbean countries and the Americans, do they have much time really to work as relay teams compared to the Europeans and the rest of the world? It just seemed to be that it seemed turn up in the day and hope for the best. The relays for the Jamaicans didn't work out at all well either.
Okay, this is gonna sound crazy to some or stupid, but when I'm working with younger kids, I explain to them, if you're in the sport long enough, running a relay, you should be able to do that with your eyes closed. Okay? We do relay often, so many times these relay are being done. You should be able to do that with your eyes closed. I mean, I've been on relay teams where we didn't even practice and we put it together. And some will say, well, that's not the Olympics. I said, you don't understand. I've been on relay teams where I start the relay. I've been on teams where I've been second. I've been on teams where I've been third. And I've been on teams where I've been anchor many times. So my point is, if I'm to go on any team, even if we practice once or twice, I will have an understanding of that athlete. If he is coming, if he slows up at the end, or if he's faster at the end, you make that judgment. Now, passing the baton, that person needs to know that I will be coming and they need to get out. And once you understand and you do this over and over, you get a better understanding, and it should not be that hard. USA, you could be upset all you want. There is no reason for USA to not finish the relay. There's no reason, because these guys, they've been running most of their lives, high school, college, they've been doing relay over and over. This should not be that difficult.
On that note, delighted our guest this evening, Kim Collins, a former 100-meter world champion, a two-time Olympian from St. Kitts.
No, 6 times.
6 times.
96 to 2016.
Nice, 6-time Olympian. My apologies.
No.
Kim, an absolute pleasure talking to you on the airwaves today. Stay safe, take care, and God bless.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you.